Remastering and re-releasing a 90s point-and-click adventure game must be a tough ask in the modern market, where the genre is increasingly niche and survives only in the indie or AA space. Arriving on the Nintendo Switch a month after other platforms, Broken Sword Shadow of the Templars Reforged is a curious mix of compelling and frustrating, as it tries to make a 28-year-old game more accessible and playable. As someone with a nostalgic hook and tolerance for dated gameplay, I feel Revolution Software have done an excellent job of revitalising the audiovisual elements, while adding some much-needed control and puzzle assists. However, for fans of modern games in the genre, or those simply curious about this influential slice of history, there are additions that can only do so much to smooth over the laborious gameplay. That said, most point-and-click games from the mid-80s to the early 2000s, what I'd guess was their golden age, relied on the narrative, cast, setting, and atmosphere, more so than the gameplay mechanics to hold your attention. The typical gameplay loop, considered in isolation, is a tough sell, as there's a lot of downtime, deliberate or otherwise. Moments between puzzle solving and story beats are often spent trudging across the environment at a glacial pace, watching canned animations play out repeatedly, listening to lengthy dialogue sequences, working through conversation topics hoping to discover a significant clue, and trying to use every item in your inventory during conversations, on each other, or on puzzle objects. Most locations are only a handful of screens big, but you can spend literal hours shuffling back and forth between them on your first playthrough. That might sound awful in a modern context, but the mechanics and controls were simple and intuitive, increasingly mouse-driven from the 90s onwards, and I can understand why the genre was so popular on PC, especially when you consider the lavish artwork, voice acting, and music they were known for. The problem is, no matter how great a story these classics may tell, the quality of puzzles was often inconsistent. To its credit, Broken Sword Shadows of the Templars was never that cryptic, and kept most of the puzzles limited to the immediate area, with the final chapters feeling more linear and focused as it rushed towards a conclusion. Most puzzles reward logical choices or creative thinking, and will leave you laughing at the outcome and sometimes feeling smart. However, there are still puzzles that will see you just exhausting all available interactions until something significant happens, and sometimes they'll have a fail state that'll mean sitting through unskippable cutscenes before you can reload and try again. To be fair, all point-and-click games have the same flaw. Any significant roadblock can grind the narrative pacing to a halt and quickly frustrate the player. Thankfully, this reforged version includes much-needed control and hint features to keep you moving forward. It still uses an emulated cursor for exploration, or even the touchscreen on the Nintendo Switch in handheld mode, but menu and inventory interactions use the D-pad and make it much quicker to discuss, examine, or combine items. The Director's Cut hint system returns, providing a succession of increasingly detailed advice, but you can now enable in-game highlights. At first you'll see a faint sparkling effect over screen transitions, characters, interactable objects, or inventory items, but it'll eventually change to blue icons that spell out the correct course of action. You can, of course, disable them if you want, but I'd consider them essential for a smooth journey. I've already mentioned the narrative, characters, and setting were often the most crucial elements of these games, and that still holds true, for better or worse, depending on your perspective. Broken Sword Shadows of the Templars Reforged is a product of its time. There are plenty of absurd situations, awkward conversations, witty observations, and slapstick humor that'll make you chuckle, but there's also a reliance on some outdated references and stereotype-driven humor that writers tend to avoid these days. Look past that though, and you'll also find an incredibly well-written and compelling historical mystery thriller, which features plenty of real-world events reworked into a modern-day conspiracy involving the remnants of the Knights Templar and an order of Middle Eastern assassins. You play as George Stobart, a seemingly stereotypical brash American tourist who narrowly escapes injury during a cafe explosion assassination. Having seen the killer dressed as a clown and having been brushed off by the French detective who arrives suspiciously quickly, he befriends French photojournalist Nico to investigate further. What begins as a quest to identify the assassin for the police quickly evolves into a continent-spanning adventure to uncover clues hidden in an ancient manuscript that might lead to the site of a Templar treasure. You'll frequently return to Paris, but also explore towns and ruins in Ireland, Syria, Spain and Scotland, meeting new people, solving puzzles, and avoiding both Templar goons and a Syrian assassin attempting to thwart their plans. Nico plays a limited love interest in the first game, but both her and George grow over the adventure into a tough and likable pair of protagonists. The core story is fantastic, full of interesting snippets of history, nefarious schemes, satisfying revelations, and a few stylish cutscenes. But the highlight and source of much of its humor is the excellent writing for every character and possible interaction, regardless of whether they're necessary to push the story forward or not. George is inherently likable, given his enthusiastic approach to everything, from the mundane to the remarkable, gleefully tackling dangerous investigations, exploring ancient ruins, or simply irritating locals to distract them from their duties and steal their tools. He has plenty of great observations about the environment and the people he sees, and will discuss just about any inventory item with anyone. The sewer key he finds in the opening scene must have 100 lines of dialogue dedicated to it, and it was always worth showing the tools you've stolen to their owners for added hilarity. In wrapping up, it's worth highlighting that Broken Sword Shadows of the Templars Reforged looks great and runs well on the Nintendo Switch despite that 1-month delay. The remastered artwork retains much of the environmental geometry and distinctive character features, but everything has been massively embellished at a much higher resolution, and with a ton of added detail that enhances but really changes the original designs. It has a more vibrant, stylized look, similar to Broken Sword 5, The Serpent's Curse, that sometimes alters the original atmosphere. You can always switch it back to the classic visuals if you want. The cutscenes also look impressively sharp and enhanced, and most of the audio and music has been cleaned up, though the odd line sounded distorted and out of place. Overall, it's an excellent remaster of an influential classic, and fans of the original won't be disappointed. For newcomers, just go in with your expectations and check, and make sure to make full use of the hint system the moment you find yourself stuck. There's a great story with endearing characters that still holds up, but no amount of audiovisual or control enhancements can hide the fact the gameplay is rooted in the past.
If you've got this far, please consider giving the video a like and maybe subscribing to our channel, as it helps us grow.